Hello everyone, a very good morning and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to the daily Hindu News Analysis. So let's begin the discussion by first looking at the articles that we are going to cover today. I have chosen 5 important articles and columns which are relevant from a mains point of view, and we have chosen 5 more smaller articles that are more relevant for the prelims examination. So let's cover all these topics in detail. We shall be discussing 10 articles from today's newspaper, and it will be a comprehensive discussion so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are benefiting from this initiative, just let us know by liking the video, share your comments, and do subscribe to the channel. So let's begin by looking at this article from page number 6. Please make a correction here. It's a typographical error. On page number 6, the Hindu carries a column that deals with the topic of UCC, or the Uniform Civil Code, which has been making a lot of news in the last few weeks. The writer, who is a very popular economist, Pullappure Balakrishnan, he talks about the need for UCC in the Indian context. So let's understand this topic in complete detail. Let's understand the context first as to why UCC is in news. Let's examine what is UCC, what are the constitutional provisions, and let's look at both sides of the argument. It's a very controversial, debatable topic. So let's understand the supporting arguments for UCC and the argument against it as well. And then we'll take a look at what the writer is saying. The topic of Uniform Civil Code has again gained national attention because a few weeks back, the 22nd Law Commission of India, it has called for a response from the public, from all the stakeholders, including religious leaders, inviting their opinions for implementing Uniform Civil Code in India. The Law Commission of India is an advisory body. Of course, its recommendations are not binding on the government, but it looks at various laws and regulations in the country and suggests changes and reforms to keep them in line with the Constitution and with the modern day demands. The 22nd Law Commission of India has recently called for a public debate and has asked for opinions from all the stakeholders regarding implementing UCC. Following this, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he was addressing a political rally, even the Prime Minister gave a call for bringing UCC in the country. He said in a democracy like India, we can't have different laws governing personal matters for different religions based on different religious codes. So as a result, the topic has gained a lot of attention. It has triggered a national debate again. And of course, it has triggered a major political controversy given its links with communal politics. Now let's look at UCC from a broader perspective. Our political parties have narrowed down the debate and they have made it a communal issue. But UCC is a much bigger and a much broader issue that affects the larger Indian society, and it's not just limited to the communal aspects of the debate. Now, if you look at the personal laws in India, the personal laws that governs marriage, then adoption, divorce, inheritance, then even adoption, right? All these personal matters, they are currently governed by religious codes, which are heavily influenced by religious traditions, the preachings of religious texts, and what the clergy and the religious scholars have believed in. Most of these codes which govern our personal laws, be it the Hindu Marriage Act, the Muslim personal laws, there are similar laws for the Christian community as well. These laws, they were largely instituted by the British. They all date back to the colonial period. That's what the writer is pointing out as well. Post-independence, Indians in general have not been consulted regarding how they should be governed with regard to the personal laws in the country. In post-independent India, there hasn't been enough consultation with the people of India to determine the personal laws of the country. Most of the personal laws that we have today, they are of colonial origin, brought out by the British colonial government, based on their consultation with the clergy and religious scholars, not with the Indian public. So obviously any such personal laws will be outdated. It will be influenced by religious orthodoxy and conservative ideologies, and it is never suited for a modern democracy. The very spirit of UCC is to provide for an egalitarian society where everyone has equal laws and equal rights, irrespective of one's religion or caste or gender. But as I told you, the politicization of this issue has given it just a communal color. But UCC is a much bigger issue, a much broader issue, and any modern civilized society should aspire to have common laws as far as personal matters are concerned. Religious codes and other orthodox doctrines should not be dictating personal matters, ideally. But you should also keep in mind that India is a diverse country. India is a very diverse country with regard to its religions, communities, practices, traditions, etc. And you cannot enforce laws as well without bringing all the sections of the society on board, right? So that is why it requires a balanced debate, it requires consensus building, and then UCC becomes a desirable feature in a modern democracy. Now, if you examine this debate further, I'll take you through the personal laws currently governing Hindus, Muslims, and Christians. We will look at both sides of the argument here. But what the writer is saying is that it's important for Indians to debate on this issue, because post-independence, Indians have not been consulted. British era policies have largely continued in this regard. As I told you, the British had consulted only the clergy and the religious scholars. Obviously, these personal laws were heavily influenced by conservative ideologies. Whether the British did it to respect the sentiments of the natives or as a part of their divide and rule strategy, that is irrelevant. In today's Indian democracy, what we need to consider is that, does the personal laws suit the requirements of a modern Indian constitution, a modern Indian society? That is what we need to examine. So what exactly is a uniform civil code? As I mentioned, a uniform civil code is a set of personal laws that govern personal matters. It's as simple as that. Personal matters such as marriage, divorce, adoption, inheritance, succession, right? Even maintenance given to the partner after divorce. All these aspects of personal affairs, right? They're governed through a set of laws which we refer to as personal laws. When you have a uniform set of laws for all the citizens in the country, irrespective of their religion, their traditions, and their gender, then it is said to be a uniform civil code. Is that clear? Currently in India, the personal laws are based on religious affiliations. So the UCC aims to replace that. Now, what is the constitutional backing for this? UCC is mentioned in the Indian Constitution under the DPSPs, under Directive Principles of State Policy. If you look at Article 44 of the Indian Constitution, it calls upon the Indian state to seek to ensure a uniform civil code for people across the Indian territory. But however, please remember, DPSPs are not enforceable by courts. They are mere recommendations to the state. It's not like a fundamental right. Fundamental rights are enforceable, but not DPSPs. DPSPs are a guide for the state. What should be done, what should be achieved. It's not what must be achieved, right? So DPSPs are not enforceable by courts. It's not like your fundamental rights. It is a mere guidance to the state to focus on certain policies. So Article 44 does encourage the state to seek out the implementation of a uniform civil code across the entire country. Now, let's take a look at the personal laws which are currently in operation. Let's see what kind of differences exist. From religion to religion, right, and also based on gender, there are a lot of inequalities and discriminations that exist. This is not about comparing one religion with another. It's not about comparing one practice or one tradition in one faith with the other. This is more about equality of rights for all citizens, especially for women. Because I hope you know that in most orthodox societies governed by religion and tradition, or also in patriarchal societies, which are male-dominated societies, women often face discrimination. There is unequal treatment for women in terms of inheritance, succession, even marriage, divorce, and adoption. In all these personal matters, women as a gender feel discriminated. This is a disempowerment of women. Now, if you look at the Hindu Succession Act of 1956, which applies not just to the Hindu community but also to Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs, Hindu women have equal rights to inherit property from their parents. But however, under the Hindu Succession Act, Hindu Marriage Act, the male of the household is treated as the head of the household, not the women. Because India is largely a patriarchal society, a male-dominated society. In many personal matters, it's the head of the household who is a male, a Hindu male in a Hindu undivided family, who takes the lead, who gets the preference. This determines entitlements as well. Legally, even though Hindu women are entitled to equal rights in inheriting property, right, in a male-dominated society which is recognized by the religious codes, right, it perpetuates the patriarchal orthodox traditions. If you look at the rights of married and unmarried daughters in case of Hindu Succession Act, they have equal rights as joint legal heirs for ancestral property. This is with regard to Hindu Succession Act. Over here, the rights of women is actually being upheld under Hindu Succession Act in terms of whether the daughter is married or not, right? She will be considered as a joint legal heir to the ancestral property and has an equal share. Now, if you look at Muslim women governed under Muslim personal law, they are entitled to a share of their husband's property only, which is either 1/8 or 1/4, depending on the presence of children. However, the daughter's share is just half of that of the son's. You can clearly see the impact of patriarchal traditions under Muslim personal law as well. Then Christians, Parsis, and Jews governed under the Indian Succession Act. With regard to Christian women, they receive a predetermined share based on the presence of children or even other relatives in some cases. And in the Parsi community, Parsi widows receive an equal share as their children, with half the child share going to the deceased parents if they are alive. Now the point here is, across different communities, the laws related to inheritance, succession are differing, right? And within each community, within each personal law inspired by religious codes, there is an element and a degree of discrimination against women. So this is the issue that UCC seeks to address primarily. There are several arguments in support of UCC, including by our constitution makers. And Dr. Ambedkar, the chairman of the drafting committee of the constitution himself, was a strong supporter of the Uniform Civil Code. Dr. Ambedkar was of the view that to make India an egalitarian democracy with equal rights for everyone, a UCC is a must. Religious codes have to be cast aside and a uniform civil code has to be implemented. But however, within the Constituent Assembly, there were several debates highlighting the problems with enforcement of UCC. If UCC is prematurely enforced on the Indian society, it might have a lot of adverse consequences as well. If all the sections of the Indian society are not prepared to accept the uniform civil codes, it might threaten the very integrity of the nation. It might disrupt harmony in the society and create an unfavorable bias towards the stronger majority communities while putting pressure on the weaker minority communities. So given these controversial debates within the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Ambedkar agreed that the time is not right to bring UCC right now. That's why UCC was never introduced as a fundamental right. Rather, it was added as a directive principle to the state. Dr. Ambedkar believed that UCC should be purely voluntary to begin with, and only when all the fears expressed by the Indian society is addressed, only then, only when the country is ready for it, only then UCC should be brought in. That is what Dr. Ambedkar opined. Personally, he was in favor of it, but by listening to the arguments of others and the controversy, the debate it triggered, he respected those arguments and he said that yes, India is not ready yet. So it should be a directive principle, something, it should be a goal, that something India should strive to achieve in the future. It's a matter left for the future parliament, where UCC will be voluntary to begin with, and then when the country is ready, could be enforced on a countrywide scale. If you look at the Supreme Court, that is post-independence, there are several notable judgments the Supreme Court has passed in this regard in many landmark cases. The Supreme Court also has consistently supported a uniform civil code. For example, in the Shah Bano case and in Sarla Mudgal case, for example, these are some popular cases where the Supreme Court has recognized the importance of bringing a UCC as mentioned in Article 44 of the Constitution. In the Shah Bano case, the court was looking at the provision of maintenance for Muslim women following their talaq. Right? In this landmark case, the Supreme Court urged the government to start working towards securing a uniform civil code for the citizens. It said that the legislative is entrusted, that is, the parliament is entrusted with the duty. It reminded the parliament of its duty under Article 44. In the Sarla Mudgal case of 1995, the Supreme Court requested the Prime Minister to re-examine Article 44 and bring out UCC throughout the country. But however, later judgments have clarified that the Supreme Court is not ordering the government or the legislature, because the Supreme Court cannot be seen to be directly meddling in this issue. That would be a breach of doctrine of separation of powers as well. This is a matter largely left to the legislature of the country. This being a sensitive issue, it's a matter left to the parliament to debate and for the parliament to bring out a law if necessary. Supreme Court has only given the directions in support of UCC, but it has not ordered the parliament or the government to bring out a law. Is that clear? But in several landmark cases, it has supported the Uniform Civil Code. So that irrespective of religion, irrespective of gender, common laws can apply in personal matters. Now let's see what are the strong arguments against it. If you look at the 21st Law Commission of India, the previous Law Commission, it had recommended that UCC is neither necessary nor desirable at this stage for India. This has been a consistent opinion of many experts as well in the past. Even though UCC is desirable, even though it's an egalitarian objective, the point is India is not ready as a society. It's neither desirable at this stage and it's neither necessary at this stage, according to several experts. The same stand was taken by the 21st Law Commission of India as well. The Law Commission had observed that given the cultural diversity of India, imposing a UCC without adequate debate, without preparing the Indian society, could threaten the very territorial integrity of the nation. It could breed discord, create communal disharmony, and create unnecessary divisions in the society. If you also consider various tribal communities, this is not just a communal issue. If you look at various tribes in central India, in northeast India, many tribal communities, they have their own distinct cultural practices. They have their own distinct traditions. Many tribal communities are matriarchal in nature, unlike the patriarchal Indian society in general. In terms of divorce, adoption, inheritance, succession, in several tribes, the inheritance follows the matrilineal lineage, where the mother is seen as the household, where women is seen as the head of the household. Also in tribal communities, in terms of divorce, in terms of marriage as well, the laws, the customs are very different. This is the diversity of India. Now enforcing a uniform code on all the communities without their consensus will only create discord. It will only create disharmony in the society. That is something you should keep in mind. This is not just a Hindu-Muslim issue, Hindu-Christian issue, it's not just a communal issue, as the political parties are projecting. There are much bigger concerns, much wider concerns. Given the tribal communities, their traditions, which they have followed from centuries, enforcing uniform laws on them without their consensus could affect their distinct cultural identity. If their distinct cultural identity is compromised and if they feel threatened, this might instigate more discord and disharmony and even breed discontent against the state. So that's why the Law Commission had opined that it's neither necessary nor desirable at this stage for India. Then if you look at the prevailing personal laws, the Law Commission has said that it is discrimination and not difference which lies at the root of inequality. The different personal laws is not what affects women. It's the general discrimination against women in a patriarchal society that is affecting women's rights. That is also a very valid and a just observation with the Law Commission. It added that efforts have to be first made to reconcile the diversity in India. There should be enough debate on the issue without compromising the rights of one community. There should be a reconciliation within the Indian society which may take few more decades or sometime in the future when the Indian society is more harmonized. Maybe then a law like UCC can be considered, and at this point it is not desirable according to the previous Law Commission. It noted that suggestions of law commissions are not binding. It's only a reference for the government, the legislature, etc. But however, these arguments against UCC are also credible arguments. Right? Many legal constitutional experts also believe that enforcing the UCC without adequate consultation will do more harm to India than benefiting the Indian society. The writer, on the other hand, brings up some very interesting and very important arguments. The writer is very, very clear that the current personal laws that exist, the Hindu personal laws, Muslim personal laws, Christian personal laws, and those which apply for other communities, they are all heavily driven by patriarchy and religious orthodoxy. This is something we all can agree upon, right? This is something which is an established fact. The personal laws currently are heavily driven by patriarchy, right? Irrespective of which religious code you're talking about, be it the Hindu Marriage Act, Hindu Succession Act, the Muslim Personal Laws, the Indian Succession Act, patriarchy is widely prevalent because this is something that comes from a male-dominated society where women are generally discriminated, especially in terms of divorce, then succession, inheritance, maintenance, etc. Religious orthodoxy tends to favor conservative ideas, and that always discriminates against the weaker gender, that is women. The writer feels that the current personal laws which are operating in India, they disempower women, be it a Hindu woman or a Muslim woman or a Christian woman. They feel disempowered because of the patriarchal nature of the personal laws and the religious orthodoxy which is built into it. The writer brings up one more very, very important argument which is not being discussed currently, that is the rights of LGBTQIA plus community, the rights of sexual minorities, the rights of transgenders, lesbians, bisexuals, gay, etc. This community is facing critical challenges, even in mundane issues. For example, in opening a joint bank account, in getting an insurance for their partner. The LGBTQIA plus community is facing incredible challenges which is hampering their basic fundamental rights. So the writer is arguing that a UCC should transcend religion. It should transcend the communal divisions and focus on women and sexual minorities in the country because they have been disempowered and ignored under the current personal laws. As I told you, in a Hindu undivided family, it's only the male, the head of the, who's considered as the head of the household. A divorced Muslim woman is not entitled to maintenance beyond a certain given period. Amongst certain tribes, there are customs where women are not given any share in their ancestral property. There are few tribes in central India and also in other parts of the country where women have no inheritance rights at all. Parsi women are disavowed from the family if they marry outside their community. They're completely excommunicated, meaning they have no rights over their property. They can't inherit anything if they marry someone outside their community. This applies only for Parsi women, not for the man. You can clearly see the gender-based discrimination here. And the other key argument the writer is bringing is the plight of the LGBTQIA plus community. Forget inheritance, forget marriage, divorce. With regard to opening bank accounts, getting an insurance for their partner, it's not possible for members of LGBTQIA plus community. Hence, the writer is strongly supporting a UCC. He's saying that the Indian Constitution threw out the caste system at the very beginning of the Indian Constitution. Right? Now, why can't we do the same with regard to personal laws? Personal laws have been retained in the name of respecting religious customs, in the name of respecting antiquity and tradition. If modern independent India as a democracy could throw out the caste system through the constitution itself, the constitution declares untouchability as illegal, right? It seeks out equal rights for everyone without any form of discrimination. If caste system could be seen as a bane of the Indian society, if it was not continued as part of tradition and antiquity and customs, why are we continuing with outdated religious customs? That is the question the writer is asking. There is no place for such religious laws and personal laws in a modern democracy. If you're retaining them, then you're no longer a democracy. That is what the writer is pointing out. So the writer is strongly supporting a UCC and encouraging a debate with all sections of the society to junk and throw out these outdated personal laws inspired by religious codes, just like the caste system has been junked by the constitution. He says that gender minorities and sexual minorities, they deserve equal rights, and that is why a uniform civil code is necessary. That is the argument, the valid argument the writer is making. Is that clear? So this completes my detailed discussion of this important sensitive topic. Now let's move on to the next article. There is a column on page number 6 that examines the proposed Digital Personal Data Protection Bill. It has been reported that the Union Cabinet has recently approved the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, and it is likely to be introduced in the upcoming monsoon session of the Parliament. Now this is a very big development, because India, even though it is one of the biggest internet markets in the world, even though India contributes massive amounts of data to the larger internet, we still don't have a data protection regime in the country. Personal data in India enjoys no legal protection as of now. Previous attempts have hit a dead end. So the government is making a fresh attempt to bring out a new personal data protection law, and a bill has been readied by the government, approved by the cabinet, likely to be introduced in the upcoming monsoon session. So in this context, let's quickly understand what is personal data, why it needs protection, what are the previous attempts that were made, and look at the current bill which is being brought out and the issue that the writer is pointing out. When we say personal data, the data which is directly linked with one's personal details is personal data. If you look at the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union, it defines personal data as any data, any information related to a living person. If you use a certain data and if you can connect the person behind it, if you can identify the living person behind the data, then such data is personal data. Data related to location of an individual, their name and other biometric details, including physical attributes, health information, their IP address, their date of birth, gender, their address, etc. All such personal details, right? Including their biometric records. All of that constitutes personal data. Any data through which you can identify the living person who generated the data, that is personal data. The GDPR of European Union is seen as a model law for the world. It's seen as a benchmark set by European Union when it comes to protecting personal data. In India as well, attempts have been made to bring out a law to protect personal data. In 2017, right to privacy was declared as a fundamental right under Article 21 by the Supreme Court in the landmark K.S. Puttaswamy case. Correct? So when right to privacy was declared as a fundamental right, the interpretation was that this includes data privacy as well. So data privacy is also seen as a fundamental right, integral to Article 21, integral to right to life. Following this historic judgment, the Government of India set up a committee under Justice B.N. Sri Krishna. The B.N. Sri Krishna committee was constituted in 2017 to recommend a data protection law for the country, to recommend a data protection bill. So accordingly, the B.N. Sri Krishna committee brought out a report in 2018 which identified data principles, that is the users and the citizens who are generating the data, recognized them as owners of the data, and the Sri Krishna committee recommended that any bill which is brought out should secure certain rights to the data principles, to the users and the citizens. That is, the users and citizens who are the data principles, they should have the right to consent, the right to be forgotten. That is, data cannot be collected by other fiduciaries without the consent, explicit consent of the data principles. So such recommendations were given out by B.N. Sri Krishna committee, and it recognized all other entities, all public sector and private sector entities and organizations which collect the data, process and store the data, and recognize them as data fiduciaries and impose some obligations on them. So based on these recommendations, the government came out with a personal data protection bill that was tabled in the parliament in 2019. In 2019, a personal data protection bill was already introduced, but the bill contained a lot of controversial provisions and it faced very strong opposition in the parliament because the government had given itself a lot of exemptions, especially for security agencies and law enforcement agencies. On the grounds of national security, a lot of exemptions had been given where these government agencies could breach your data privacy in the name of national security. These widespread exemptions which had been given triggered a controversy in the parliament that the ruling party could misuse these powers to promote mass surveillance and targeted surveillance without respecting your data privacy. As a result, the bill was pushed for a joint parliamentary committee review. Even after the parliamentary committee review, a lot of amendments were suggested, and because of all the controversy and the opposition, the government withdrew this bill last year. Instead of bringing so many amendments, right, the government decided to withdraw the bill entirely, and now a fresh personal data protection bill has been drafted by the Ministry of Electronics and IT. The draft bill was placed in the public domain in December 2022 for inviting a feedback from the public, and based on that, the Union Cabinet has approved the final bill, and according to reports, it is likely to be tabled in the upcoming monsoon session. As of now, the final version of the bill is not available in the public domain. We don't know what are the exact provisions that are included. But based on the draft version which was earlier introduced, the writer is saying that there are two provisions in the bill which threatens the RTI Act. That is the central point of discussion of the writer. The writer is pointing out that if you look at the draft version of the bill, which the government had tabled in December 2022, there are few provisions specifically which threatens right to information, and this could threaten democracy itself and weaken the access of Indian citizens to information, to essential information. Is that clear? That is what the writer is pointing out. See, RTI, or right to information, was a major landmark reform that was introduced in 2005. The Mazdoor Kisan Shakti organization led a movement in 2003-2004 seeking access to certain government information to protect citizen rights. This led to the debate on right to information or freedom of information, and the then UPA government headed by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh introduced this landmark law called RTI Act, the Right to Information Act. It gave citizens a distinct and unique right to access essential government information and thus empowered them to expose any wrongdoings from the government, to expose corruption, to make them the owners of essential information and thus strengthen democracy in the country. The RTI was a major governance reform in the field of good governance that introduced transparency and accountability in the system, where every citizen was empowered to seek out essential information from public institutions, which could be used to ensure accountability in the system, ensure transparency in the system, especially to tackle corruption and wrongdoings by government officials. So this became a powerful democratic tool in the hands of citizens. And now this is being threatened by the Personal Data Protection Bill which has been proposed. See, under the RTI Act, there are few exemptions which are provided. There are 10 categories of information which is exempted from disclosure. Some of them deal with national security issues, India's foreign relations, cabinet bills, etc. They cannot be revealed in the public domain in the interest of the smooth functioning of the government, law and order, and national security interests. Under these exemptions, there is one particular exemption under Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J, that deals with information of a personal nature. See, all the exemptions are listed from A to J, Subclause A to J, under 10 subsections under Section 8, Clause 1. So under this, you have Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J, that specifically exempts information that is of a personal nature. Information related to a person or an individual cannot be revealed by the public information officer. This could be a ground for denying right to information. Let's say a citizen has filed a RTI request with the government department. The concerned PIO, the public information officer, who is mandated through the law to provide for the requested information, will scrutinize the petition and see if it falls under the exempted category, under the 10 exemptions that are given under the law. If the information being sought is somehow related to a person, if it's related to their personal information, or if it's a matter of their privacy, then the PIO can deny access to such information. This is a ground for denying access to information. Now, the fear here is that the Personal Data Protection Bill which has been proposed by the government seeks to amend this provision. It seeks to amend the provision and make it a stronger exemption which the PIOs can easily use to block any request for information by linking it with personal information and privacy. See, PIOs, when they get these applications, these requests, they have been given a certain guidelines under the RTI Act before providing the information which has been asked. They have to check whether the exemptions match the test which is recommended under the law. In this case of personal information and matter of privacy of an individual, the PIO has to check whether the information cannot be denied to the parliament or a state legislature. Any such information shall not be denied to any person as well. It basically means any information which is denied to the parliament or state legislature is personal information. Such information can be withheld by the PIO. It means it's a matter of someone's privacy. Such information need not be revealed in the public domain. If information is not made available to the parliament itself, to the state legislature itself, then such information is deemed to be of a personal nature related to some individual, and such information need not be revealed in the public. So this becomes an exemption. This is the test it should fulfill. But now there are concerns that these exemptions have been frequently misused by the public information officers and by the government in general. In general, the exemptions have been widened. They have been given a very wide scope and especially the exemption related to personal information has often been misused to deny information related to corruption and wrongdoings. When citizens have asked for genuine information, if it is linked with some wrongdoing or illegal act or with some corrupt act, the PIOs have denied the information to cover up the corruption case. The excuse they give is that the information being asked is of personal nature. It's related to the privacy of some individual, so we are denying the information. So this blanket exemption has already been misused under the RTI Act. And now, the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, which has been proposed, seeks to amend this provision to further strengthen this provision. It seeks to amend Section 8, Clause 1, Subclause J of RTI Act. That is the concern the writer is pointing out. By amending this provision of the RTI Act, all information related to an individual can now be easily denied to be placed in the public domain. So according to the writer's fear is that this will simply become an excuse for PIOs to deny access to information, because the term person has been very widely defined, which includes companies and the state as well. So PIOs can link any request for information with some person and thereby make it a ground for exemption and a ground for denial of information to the citizens. So the fear of the writer is that right to information will become right to deny information because of this proposed amendment. In the name of data privacy, right, the law is seeking higher protection for personal data, and as it seeks an amendment to the RTI exemption, this will empower PIOs to use this as an excuse to deny access to information by linking every request with some personal information. Because the very term person is widely defined in the proposed bill. Person is not just referring to individuals, it also refers to companies and the state as well. This is where the writer is expressing his concern and is saying that if the bill is passed in the current version, it is a threat to RTI and it could weaken Indian democracy. Is that clear? Now moving on to the next column from page 7. It's related to the trade disputes between India and US. There's a development that we should understand. It's actually a small topic. Recently, Prime Minister Modi paid a historic visit to the United States. Right? We discussed that in detail. I'm sure all of you are aware of the visit of the PM to the US. A lot of important agreements were signed and deals were struck. But one important outcome of the Prime Minister's visit was that India-US, they managed to resolve 6 standing trade disputes at the WTO through a bilateral settlement. India-US, even though they are very close trading partners, they do have some trade issues and disputes that were going on. Both sides had filed cases against each other at the WTO dispute settlement mechanism and at the WTO appellate body. But the WTO appellate body has been redundant since 2019. So any cases filed here goes into a void, which means those cases will not be heard. Those disputes will continue to remain, affecting the bilateral trade between those two countries. The two countries have now gone one step ahead. They have bypassed the multilateral WTO appellate system and they have settled the dispute bilaterally, and this is an unprecedented achievement which highlights the close relations between the two countries. It shows how close the two countries are in their trading relationship and with regard to their diplomatic relations. Irrespective of the redundancy of WTO and its inefficiency in resolving these disputes, India-US have bilaterally resolved 6 standing trade disputes. So that is what the writer is pointing out. And he says that there is no such parallel for this. Usually disputes brought up at WTO, which is a multilateral platform, have not been resolved bilaterally. But India-US have set an example, and that showcases the strength of the relationship. Is that clear? Some of the disputes were related to India's domestic requirements under the National Solar Mission, which had been opposed by the US. US had said this is discriminatory and unfair for American companies. It seeks to unfairly favor Indian domestic companies, so it had filed a case against India at the WTO. India also had challenged certain federal programs of the US in the renewable energy sector, which favored American domestic industries and created an unfair market for Indian producers and especially for Indian importers. So India had filed a case at WTO against the US in the renewable energy sector. Then India's foreign trade policy. India's policies related to SEZ and export-oriented units had been opposed by the US. It had said that India is giving unfair benefits to special economic zones and export-oriented units, thereby creating a trade disadvantage. So US had filed some cases against India in this regard. There was also a tariff war which had taken place between India and US when Donald Trump was the president. Donald Trump had accused India of unfair trade practices and he had levied higher tariffs on India's steel and aluminium exports to the US, which had affected India's steel and aluminium producers. India had retaliated to this by increasing the duties on agricultural imports from the US to hit US agriculture sector. So like this, there were 6 standing trade-related disputes and issues, and now both the countries have settled them bilaterally by adopting a very pragmatic approach. At WTO, the appellate body has stopped functioning since 2019. The multilateral mechanism has not been useful to resolve the trade issues. But India-US have bypassed the WTO mechanism and bilaterally they have reached a settlement which shows the strength of the trading partnership. It clearly shows how important this trade relationship is. For India especially, US is one of the top trade partners. In most years, China and US are the top trading partners for India. If you just take countries into account, China and US are the top 2 trading partners for India. India has a trade surplus with the US. Indian exporters, Indian domestic industry benefits heavily by exporting to the US market. Similarly, India is a huge market for US exports and US investments as well. So keeping in mind the strong and close relations, the 2 countries have resolved all the standing trade disputes. US has agreed to lift the unfair tariffs that had been imposed on steel and aluminium exports from India. India in return has agreed to lift the agricultural tariffs which we had imposed in retaliation. So India and US will revert back to the MFN treatment, most favored nation treatment, as recommended by WTO. Meaning, we will treat each other as the most favored nation. We will give them the same treatment as our most favored nation. We will not discriminate against the other country. We will not create unfair barriers, trade barriers for the other country. So MFN treatment will be completely brought back, at least in sectors where disputes had come up, and they have mutually settled this issue, which is an unprecedented development, right? So that is the advancement in the India-US relations that you see in the last 2 decades, and that is the key point the writer is highlighting in this column. Next, on the same page, the Hindu carries a few infographics that highlights the risk that small states are facing with regard to their fiscal situation. This column and the set of infographics provided here, they are highlighting the risk, the financial risk being faced by smaller states in India because of their heavy dependency on the union government. When we say small states, we are referring to states with a population of less than 1 crore. These states have a natural disadvantage. These states are remote states of India, usually located in the border areas or in hilly areas. They have a smaller population, smaller economies, and as a result, they have very few revenue generating sources. Also, they are located in border areas, they face increased security risks, and as their domestic revenue collection within the state is less, they end up depending heavily on the center. They depend on center's financial devolution, they borrow from the center, thereby making them dependent on the center, which has an impact on center-state relations. It weakens federalism when states become so dependent on the center with regard to finances. Now, this is clearly brought out in the infographics provided over here, which is based on the RBI's report. The Reserve Bank of India comes out with a report called the State Finances, a Study of Budgets report. It's a report of the RBI studying the finances of all the states in the country. This report clearly points out the risk being faced by smaller states such as Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Himachal Pradesh, Tripura, and few others as well. With regard to their revenue receipts, these states have been registering very low revenue collection and their dependency has increased on the union government for financial support. You can see that in the graph here. Alright? Even with regard to raising their own tax revenue as a percentage of their GDP, these states perform very poorly. These smaller states that you see here in the graph, they have very limited abilities to raise their own revenue, their own tax revenue, non-tax revenue. So the article is urging these state governments to get innovative, to promote entrepreneurial activities, more economic activities, and raise domestic revenue within the state to increase their tax collection and revenue receipts. Because this is needed for them to reduce their dependency on the union government, which is weakening federalism and tilting the balance in favor of the center with regard to center-state relations. So that is the argument this article is making through a set of data points which have been presented. Alright, that is the crux we need to take away. Apart from that, you don't need anything else. There are a lot of technical parameters mentioned here, not needed for the exam. If you are familiar with this assessment, that small states like Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, etc. have become too dependent on the union and their revenue collection abilities have deteriorated, right? And this is a threat to federalism. That understanding is more than enough. Now coming to the next article on page 13, Russia has said it is quitting the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which is a UN brokered deal. Now this is a very, very big development and you should understand this topic in detail. To understand this development, you should know what is the Black Sea Grain Initiative. You should understand the geography of Black Sea and why this grain initiative was needed. Alright, I'll help you understand this with the help of a few maps. As you know, Russia, Ukraine are at war since last year and Black Sea is the focal point of the conflict. Russia had earlier captured the Crimean Peninsula that you see here in the map. This is the Crimean Peninsula. Russia captured this from Ukraine in 2014. And last year it has mounted a full-on invasion of Ukraine. Now as the war broke out, this disrupted shipping through the Black Sea, especially food shipments were disrupted. As the war broke out, Russian Navy used its stronghold in Crimean Peninsula at the Sevastopol port to mount major naval operations and military operations from the south targeted against Ukraine. Ukraine also has retaliated in this part and the conflict which has escalated has threatened shipping through the Black Sea. Food shipments especially were disrupted and please remember Russia, Ukraine are major grain producing countries and grain exporting countries. With regard to wheat, corn, soybean, sunflower seeds and sunflower oil and etc. In all these key food exports, Russia, Ukraine were major suppliers. These essential food supplies were hit that disrupted the global food markets, resulting in massive food inflation and food shortage. It increased hunger and malnutrition in many countries, in many poor African and Asian countries. So to tackle this humanitarian situation and to stabilize the global food markets, the United Nations intervened with Turkey and they mediated a settlement between the four countries. Is that clear? Between the three countries, not four. It was mediated through the UN, the United Nations, along with Turkey as a mediator. They worked out a settlement between Russia and Ukraine. So these four stakeholders signed the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which allowed for grain shipments to continue. Russia allowed these shipments to carry on and few specific Ukrainian ports were chosen to allow the shipments to be carried forward. Turkey would facilitate the entire process through a joint coordination center that was established at Istanbul. Alright, these food shipments passed through critical straits You can see that in the map here. Black Sea is connected with the Sea of Marmara through the Bosphorus Strait controlled by Turkey. Sea of Marmara is connected with Aegean Sea and further with Mediterranean through the Dardanelles Straits over here. These two are very important choke points, very important shipping lanes that connect Black Sea with the Mediterranean. So Turkey controls the access to the two straits, Bosphorus Strait and Dardanelles Strait, and the shipping through these channels is controlled by Turkey as per the Montreux Convention. As per the Montreux Convention, Turkey has control over the Turkish straits. That's why Turkey had to play a key role along with the United Nations to broker this deal between Russia and Ukraine. Russia agreed not to target the food shipments and Ukraine agreed to continue the food shipments through selected Ukrainian ports so that food grains and essential food supplies can continue through these important ports of Ukraine. The selected ports were Odessa, Yuzhny or Pyvdeny and Kornomorsk. These three Ukrainian ports were spared by Russia. Russia promised not to target them, not to target the ships heading out from here. From here, food shipments continued through the Black Sea. Turkey would monitor the shipments. Russia committed not to attack the shipping routes. And Turkey would allow the ships to pass through the straits, Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits, to continue the food supplies. This was the settlement which had been worked out, and the initiative included a provision where either of the parties can quit if they are not comfortable with the initiative. It applies only for a few months, for 3 months, and it has to be extended every time. And countries have the option to exit as well. Russia has exercised the exit option because recently Ukraine has apparently carried out a major attack at the Kerch Strait. You can see Kerch over here. This is the Kerch Strait that connects the Sea of Azov with the Black Sea. At the Kerch Strait, there is a strategic bridge, the Kerch Bridge, which is the only link between Russia and Crimean Peninsula. This strategic bridge had been attacked earlier as well by Ukraine, and recently, 2 days ago, Ukrainian drones have launched a major attack against the Kerch Bridge, which destroys connectivity, disrupts connectivity for Russia from accessing the Crimean Peninsula. In retaliation for this attack, Russia has said it is exiting the Black Sea Grain Initiative, and this could again threaten food shipments through the Black Sea. Is that clear? So this is the entire topic that you should understand. So this completes my detailed discussion of all the important articles, and now we head towards the prelim section. We'll take a look at the smaller articles quickly, one by one. On page 1, we have an article referring to the National Multidimensional Poverty Index that is published by the Niti Aayog. Remember, just a few days back, we spoke about multidimensional poverty and the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index, which is brought out by the UN Development Programme along with Oxford University. This is part of the UNDP's report on human development. So we understood that poverty is not just a result of low income, but poverty is multidimensional. Other factors like poor health, poor education, poor standard of living, even they contribute to poverty and they create a vicious cycle of poverty. Health, education and standard of living. These are 3 essential parameters recognized by the UN to contribute to poverty. And under each of them, there are multiple indicators. Under health, education, standard of living, there are multiple indicators which have been scientifically chosen by the UNDP and Oxford University to determine multidimensional poverty. So based on this UN model, the Niti Aayog also brings out a multidimensional poverty index for every state in the country, for every state and union territory. The first edition was published last year, and now the second edition of the multidimensional poverty index has been published. This index brought out by Niti Aayog, it's based on data collected through National Family Health Survey. Is that clear? This survey captures health data, education data, and also standard of living data, including income data. By using this data and the UN accepted parameters and indicators, Niti Aayog comes out with this report, the multidimensional poverty report. And according to the report, India has significantly reduced multidimensional poverty by 9.89 percentage points from 24.85% in 2015-16 to just around 14.96% in 2019-2021. This is a 9.89% reduction over a period of 4 to 5 years. Is that clear? Compared to 2015-16, where multidimensional poverty was estimated at 24.85%, India has reduced it by 9.89%, and today multidimensional poverty stands at 14.96% as of 2019-2021. The reduction in multidimensional poverty is higher in the rural areas according to the report. This is another important finding. In rural India, multidimensional poverty has declined from 32.59% to 19.28%. So, rural India has seen a faster decline in multidimensional poverty. That is why India has managed to pull out 13.5 crore people out of multidimensional poverty in the last few years. Is that clear? In urban areas, multidimensional poverty has declined at a slower rate from 8.65% to 5.27%. That's another key fact that you should note down. The states which report the highest levels of multidimensional poverty are Bihar, Jharkhand, Meghalaya, UP and Madhya Pradesh. These are the worst performing states as far as multidimensional poverty score is concerned. They report the highest occurrence of or the highest incidence of multidimensional poverty. Alright? So please make a note of all these important facts. They are very relevant for your prelims. Next, on page 10, we have an article related to NCORD, the NCORD mechanism. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has made a reference to the NCORD mechanism, which is a key initiative by the Home Ministry to fight the drug menace in the country. This topic has been brought up by the Union Home Minister while talking about drug trafficking and national security issues at a regional conference that involved chief ministers from northern and northwestern parts of India. Is that clear? The Home Minister was engaging in a dialogue with the chief ministers of Punjab, Haryana and other states. Even Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh was participating. At this conference, the CM of Punjab highlighted the cross-border issue of drug trafficking. How from Pakistan, drones are used to smuggle drugs into Punjab. How organized criminal networks and even Pakistan's ISI have enabled this cross-border infiltration. Previously, they were doing it through smugglers. Now they are easily doing it through drones. So Punjab called for a new drone policy to regulate drones in the country. And the Home Minister has promised that we will update the drone policy as well to tackle the cross-border infiltration of drones which are smuggling drugs into India. So while discussing these issues, the Home Minister has mentioned a mechanism called NCORD, the Narco Coordination Center, which was a mechanism set up by the Home Ministry in 2016 to tackle the drug menace in the country. Because drug trafficking being an organized crime, it is closely linked with money laundering and terror financing as well. And also it's a social problem as drug addiction leads to social issues. So to tackle narcotics in the country, a coordination center was set up by the Home Ministry called NCORD mechanism, which is a 4-tiered structure up to the district level. A 4-tiered mechanism has been created in 2019 under the NCORD mechanism, which was set up in 2016. A dedicated online portal also has been created for this. There is a National Narcotics Coordination Portal led by the Home Ministry Narcotics Control Bureau at the national level and state agencies at the state level and district authorities at the district level. Such a 4-tiered mechanism has been created to combat drug smuggling, drug trafficking and drug consumption in the country. Is that clear? It's a 4-tiered mechanism up to the district level, and there is an online portal as well to share data, to register complaints, and to improve coordination between central, state and district authorities to tackle drug trafficking. It's mainly led by the Union Home Ministry and the Narcotics Control Bureau. So that's what you should remember. So it is shortened as NCORD, the Narco Coordination Center or the National Narcotics Coordination Center. All right. Next, on page 12, we have an article related to a defense technology known as Air Independent Propulsion or AIP. So this could be a prelims topic. It's in news because of the Scorpene submarine deal which India is looking to finalize with France. Right? We have discussed this in previous sessions. India is likely to procure 3 more Scorpene submarines from France. Right? So as part of Project 75, 6 Scorpene submarines have already been built in India by Masgaon Dock Limited. These are diesel electric submarines. They have already been inducted into the Navy under the INS Calvary class. Now there is a report which has not yet been confirmed by the governments that India might procure 3 more Scorpenes from France as part of Project 75I, which is an extension of Project 75. These diesel electric submarines, they come with a disadvantage. Generally, if you look at diesel electric submarines, which are conventional submarines, the problem they have is that they have to come to the surface almost every day to take in oxygen to recharge the batteries and the fuel cells which are powering the submarine. This is a very big disadvantage in a conventional diesel electric submarine. They have to come to the surface almost every day to take in fresh oxygen to recharge the fuel cells and the batteries. So they risk detection by the enemy. Submarines become useless if they lose their stealth, if they lose their ability to be anonymous, right? So as they come to the surface frequently, there are higher chances of conventional submarines being detected by the enemy. So that is why a technology has been brought out in propulsion called AIP, Air Independent Propulsion, which is used for diesel electric submarines. And India's DRDO has indigenously developed AIP. We are looking to work with France to install these indigenous air independent propulsion systems in the Scorpene submarines. The French Scorpenes, they come with air independent propulsion technology, and DRDO has developed its own indigenous version of it. That's why the topic is in news. DRDO's air independent propulsion module is still not proven. So France is likely to help DRDO in fitting the AIP modules in the next 3 submarines that we might procure. Alright, so air independent propulsion allows diesel electric submarines to remain submerged at least for a week. Instead of coming to the surface daily for taking oxygen, they have to come to the surface only once a week with air independent propulsion. Alright, so to recharge the batteries and fuel cells, they have to surface only once a week, not daily. So that is the advantage of air independent propulsion in diesel electric submarines. The best technology as far as submarines is concerned would be nuclear powered submarines, because since nuclear power is almost infinite, these submarines need not come to the surface for months together. For several months they can remain underwater because they are not dependent on oxygen supplies. They need not come to the surface regularly. Nuclear power will ensure that the propulsion needs and the battery needs are taken care of. So that's why countries which are looking to build a nuclear triad, countries which want to secure their nuclear arsenal, right? They all build nuclear powered submarines. They achieve the nuclear triad status so that their nuclear arsenal can survive, because nuclear submarines have the best chance of surviving a first nuclear strike, because they can remain hidden for long times and they can avoid enemy detection. Whereas conventional submarines always have a drawback. Alright, but air independent propulsion technology provides one advantage, that diesel electric submarines need not come to the surface so frequently, so regularly. Alright, so DRDO is indigenously developing this technology as well. Next, we have an article on the last page in the science and technology section, It refers to a condition called endometriosis. It's a very, very important topic for your prelims. Endometriosis primarily affects women of reproductive age, right from their menstruation to menopause. Throughout the reproductive cycle, women tend to suffer from endometriosis, and it affects roughly 10% of women in the reproductive age. Almost 1 in 10 women worldwide are said to suffer from this condition, which primarily affects the uterine lines, the abdominal area, and the reproductive organs. It's a chronic disease which leads to life-impacting pain. It leads to severe pain during menstrual cycle, sexual intercourse, bowel movements, urination, causes chronic pelvic pain, abdominal bloating, nausea, fatigue, and affects the day-to-day functioning of the affected woman, pushes them into anxiety, depression, and affects their day-to-day life. So this is a very serious chronic condition that affects women of reproductive age, and currently there is no known cure for the disease. Any treatment is just aimed at symptomatic treatment, controlling the symptoms. So in this regard, there is a new study which has come out. A study has found a direct link between a bacteria, Fusobacterium, and endometriosis. This is the development reported in the article. A new research has confirmed a link between an infectious bacteria known as Fusobacterium and endometriosis. This could potentially open an opportunity for researchers to develop treatment for this disease. As of now, there is no cure, as I told you. Potentially, antibiotic-based treatment can be developed by researchers now that they have found a link between an infectious bacterium and endometriosis condition. Is that clear? So that is the important development you have to take note of. Coming to the last article on the same page, the article refers to an interstellar object called the Rho Ophiuchi Cloud Complex. It is this spectacular looking region in space, in the interstellar space that you see over here, which has been captured by the James Webb Space Telescope. As you know, the James Webb Space Telescope, which was launched in 2021 by NASA with collaboration with other space agencies, it has been capturing spectacular images since last year. It is giving us new insights into the universe. So it has captured the image of the Rho Ophiuchi Cloud Complex, and this could be a prelims topic because this is the closest star forming region located to Earth. That is what you should remember. It's basically an interstellar space filled with cloud dust, cosmic and cosmic particles. And it is the closest star forming region present to the Earth and the solar system. Alright, it's a region where stars are born. So Rho Ophiuchi complex, cloud complex, has always been a region of intense interest amongst astronomers and researchers. And a high profile image, high resolution image of the region has been captured by the James Webb Space Telescope. So please make a note of this, could be relevant for your prelims. So this brings my detailed discussion of today's The Hindu newspaper to an end. Please take up the questions for your mains answer writing practice, and also head to the Telegram channel to attempt a quiz on some of these topics to help you revise these articles again. So this concludes my discussion. I hope you guys liked it. Do let me know in the comments, and I'll see you tomorrow at the same time at 10 a.m. Till then, take care. Have a good day.